All right, I think we're good to go. Welcome everyone to this 9x live session on building a workforce of AI agents with Relevance AI. Before I hand over to our very special guest for today, I'll just do a little quick introduction about who we are. So, hi, my name is Jan. I'm one of the co-founders of 9x. And at 9x, we are building your one-stop shop to learn AI and automation. So we really believe that AI and automation are the most important skills to learn right now, especially as a business professional. And we're on a mission to basically bring you these skills on a silver platter. We offer courses, company workshops, live workshops like the one you're all in right now, and all the way down to custom programs for larger companies. Now, that's a little bit on who we are and what we do, but in terms of how we do it, we basically have, and this is for the first time, I think that we are showing this, our brand new course offering. So we really believe that as everything is developing so fast, there is a lot to learn in terms of AI and also automation. So we've sort of structured our new courses from beginner all the way up to advanced. And we have three courses, a couple of them haven't even launched yet. So you are able to join the waitlist. We have our AI starter course where you can discover what's possible with AI today as a business professional. Then our AI operator course, which shows you how you can become productive with AI at work by leveraging AI as your co-pilot, showing you how to leverage ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude, and then all the way up to our most advanced AI builder program, which is really about learning to automate with AI, whether that's using AI in automations, maybe built in tools like Make, Zapier, or N8N, or all the way up to building AI agents in tools like Relevance that we'll see today. So I'll just quickly drop those links in the chat for anyone that is interested. As I said, the AI Starter and AI Operator courses haven't been launched yet. They are brand new and we will be launching them in the next week. So feel free to join the waitlist and otherwise check out our AI Builder course. And in terms of next week's live session, since we are launching the AI Operator course, Alex from 9x will be hosting a very special live workshop on how to become an AI operator. So he's going to share some practical insights on how anyone, regardless of technical background, can confidently board the AI train and develop valuable skills that are increasingly in demand across industries. And I will also drop a link to that live session in the chat. So for anyone who's interested, feel free, and we will see you next week. But now that is all from me, and now I can hand over to our, as I said, special guest, Ahmed from Relevance AI. I'm very excited about today's session, not only because we're going to be diving into multi-agent systems. I'm not sure how many of you in the crowd have already explored AI agents. I've set up quite a few single AI agents, but still not really multi-agent systems. So I'm also very excited. But what I'm most excited about is that this is the first all-Australian 9x Live that we have. So Ahmed's joining us from Sydney. I think we need to be careful, Ahmed. We'll try not to get into too much slang. We'll try, and if we do, please let us know in the comments and we'll catch ourselves. But Ahmed, welcome. Great to have you on.
Thanks, Jan, for the amazing intro. And it's awesome, honestly, to see what is being built here in this community that is just growing and growing as the year goes on. Everyone loves building in this space, and we're just seeing so many different personas coming into this building, experimenting, really adding to the whole ecosystem. So it's great. I won't mislead you. I'm not Australian myself, but I seem to have maybe picked up the accent well enough that people believe it by now. I was born in New Zealand, moved here a couple of years ago. Quick little intro on me. Obviously, I work at Relevance AI, and my main role is basically in this sort of startup scale up phase, really helping users to get to value. So that's creating a lot of educational content, getting on calls with customers, helping them, build out their own workforces and agents, as well as just really building templates and resources to help people to really get to value on the platform, and doing things like these, of course, and just connecting with people, hearing about what everyone is building. So what I'm really keen to run you through today is obviously just some of the foundations, and perhaps there's a few of you who have already been in one or two of the webinars that we've run in the past, so there might be one or two things that we're going to repeat just at the start here, but we'll be really just diving into the basics because that is the building block for what is an AI workforce. So just bear with me. We won't be stuck in the sort of very simple nuts and bolts for the whole time, but I think it's important to have a few foundations set around, what is an AI agent compared to say software, co-pilots. What does an AI agent look like versus a deterministic flow? And then also, what does a team of AI agents look like? And then we'll start to look into, okay, how do these all collaborate? How do we set up these systems for scale, etc. So I'll walk you through all that at the moment. And I'll just screen share now. If that's all
Perfect.
right.
And while you're setting that up, Ahmed, feel free to ask questions along the way. Please use the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat. Maybe some things I can answer directly, but otherwise we'll be bringing these up. We really want this to be an interactive session. So use the chat. Anything that we don't cover live, we'll also have time at the end for Q&A. But if there's something from what Ahmed is showing currently, drop it in the chat, and I can definitely raise that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there might be some things that come up that are very good timing for me to go into during the presentation as well. So I'll keep my eyes out on the chat and yeah, let's get started. So just checking that that is up there for everyone. Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so I'm not sure. Maybe it's just me that I can't see it yet. One second. Is everyone able to see the screen share?
I see a yes. I see a couple yeses. All right.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Yep, I've got it now.
Great.
Awesome.
Great. Well, I hope it's the right thing. It's meant to say home of the AI workforce. That is
Yes,
what
looks
Relevance
good.
AI is. So essentially, what we have built a platform for is a basically an AI agent building platform where anyone can build and deploy AI agents. So, in my own words, I guess we're really trying to democratize building AI agents so that everyone in an organization is basically able to do so. And most importantly, what that means is that uh, let's say 100% of people at any given company in any given role, especially say founders, marketers, salespeople, even the more technical people, that's fine. Everyone's a domain expert in something. What we really want to do is allow people the opportunity to take that domain expertise and create AI agents. That's what we're all about. And so we've gone from, building infrastructure to actually create very, very complex agents and then really hone that into a user experience where people from any background are able to build AI agents. And so really taking that domain expertise and writing down a job description or such and that becoming an AI agent. That's the goal. So if we take a step back and look into this over here, let's say we've got software. We've been using software for a really long time and super useful. I don't think it's going away, but it's very manual, very unscalable. You have to scale your headcount and your team quite a lot to be able to use it at scale, right? And if we look into co-pilots, which have come in over the last few years, they've really, I guess, increased our productivity in that we're able to process a lot more text, do a lot more research at scale, basically form a lot of automations and things as well that really help us to scale our time so that one person can now, let's say, arbitrarily do 5x the work. But the problem is that co-pilots and software still require someone sort of prompting. Even though there's a few workarounds, it's not that easy to set up an autonomous autopilot process. And one of the missing links, as I'd mentioned earlier, is domain expertise, right? Really teaching these AI agents and having it confined and really catered and fine-tuned to a certain job to be done is quite tough with software and co-pilots and regular automations. So with AI agents and with Relevance AI, we're really aiming to take our sort of domain expertise and context and then really give that to something like an AI agent and allow it to scale without needing to scale a headcount. So let's say, for example, I have an account research process. I can teach an AI agent to do research exactly as I do it so that it can now go on autopilot. Let's say every time in HubSpot I have a company that is created, it is now doing what I would usually do. But the only thing is that I really knew how to do that quite specifically beforehand, and now I can teach an AI agent the same way. And we're really talking about something quite dynamic here as well because with a lot of automation platforms and a lot of our sort of I guess what you would call legacy sort of regular automations before AI and AI agents, you had to build a lot of chain events and really just like steps 1 to 7 had to occur. If it broke, it broke. And there's no adjustment, no compromise, no dynamic ability. If you look at the makeup of an agent over here, and this is kind of like a glimpse of what Relevance AI looks like as a building experience, we have these three foundational aspects, right? We've got instructions, tools, and knowledge. Now, with all of this put together, we can actually create an AI agent that is dynamic and that can compromise based on the instructions, based on the tools that it has, and the knowledge that it has as context and memory. So, what do I mean by this? If we dig a little bit deeper, with instructions, for example, I can set an objective for that agent. So really some fallback logic and be super precise with that so that it knows exactly what it should be overarchingly achieving, right? And then we can give it a codified process or some sort of logic as to how it does its job. We can get very, very general or very confined based on, how we want the process to unfold. For example, a lot of people want very general research processes. They don't know what they don't know, or there's a really specific research process that works for your company. You can write that down. So all of this is really plain English. And the idea is that you can then link in tools. So the tools like, for example, Google searching or using LinkedIn or Gmail or going back and forth with your CRM, these are skills and abilities and third-party integrations that you can teach your agent, and they live in the instructions. So this instructions window really becomes the brain and logic and, I guess, sense of self of the agent, where it has an objective, it has instructions, and it even has the tools that it actually knows how to use. So we're not really like spoon feeding every single instruction. You can if you want to, but we're really relying on the agent to dynamically do all this work for itself, right? Last thing is obviously knowledge. There are plenty of different use cases for knowledge bases. For example, customer support agents or email composing agents, and you basically give it like a context or memory of different information that you want it to refer to when it makes its decisions or when it crafts text or what have you. Lots of different use cases there. And you can see by the different sort of inputs and things you can upload that it's quite varied, right? So there's a lot that can happen there, and I can't really explain it all in one sentence, I guess. But the idea is that we're creating an AI agent that has all of this to work with and really works with one or two different like major jobs to be done at a company. And what we're really looking at today, and I guess is the purpose of this call, is that we're looking into AI workforces, right? So what does a team of of AI agents look like? So let's say each of these agents has a combination of instructions, tools, and knowledge in each one, right? They're each trained to do a very specific task or like a job to be done at a company, and they're all specialists in that. And then they can connect together. So let's say you have a account researcher, and then after that research, maybe there's a prospect researcher, and then maybe after that there is an email writer. So we're really talking about different, I guess, staff members or AI agents that have their own specialities, and then once they do their job, they pass it off to the next one and to the next one. And so it's really up to you and how your process works to map this out. No one process works the same for everyone. However, it really is just a continuation, right? I'll just pause here to see if there are any questions or anything that's relevant because this is the end of this short segment. But just want to show an overview of AI agents, how they differ from software and copilots, and then how AI agents are meant to work together at a glance.
Awesome. I think that's super, super clear. We have already quite a few questions, Ahmed, but I think they're already on like some specific topics. So some getting into RAG, some getting into multi-agent systems. So I've already noted a bunch down. I don't think there's any really on the definition yet. So I think we can jump straight in, and then yeah, I've got already a list, and I'll bring them up when it makes sense.
Yeah, sounds good. Seeing a couple things over here as well around like slides and the recording. I believe this is being recorded, so hopefully it'll be shared after. I think
Yeah,
I can share these slides with people as well if they'd like them to.
exactly. Yeah, everyone will receive an email tomorrow with the recording, and then yeah, I'll be sure to grab the slides of Ahmed and share them in the same email.
Yeah, sounds good. And Andrea, I saw your question about Lima, the lifecycle marketer. As you can see, it is here. It's one of our popular templates, and we provide a very simple, very, very regular version of it, just that's easy to plug and play. And I'll show you a bit more of that in a sec, but that is an example of a really good multi-agent system that we use ourselves. So with that, what I'll do is I'll dive into the platform and just show you from like a very simple point of view how you can start, right? Like what sort of agents I can build at a glance. One of the most popular agents, and it's very obvious why, it's a very, very common job to be done or problem to be solved, is this one called Atlas, the account analyst that I built. And so this is what an AI agent looks like. And basically, if I show you, I guess, from an outcome perspective first, what happens here, let's say we've got a company and we want to research that company. And let's say in this scenario that in HubSpot, my CRM, a company record is created. I want that company record to, or that company to be researched so that I don't have to do it. And I want to instruct it to, retrieve certain bits of information and then put it back into my CRM. So as you can see over here, this company was created. Sometimes I have a name, sometimes I have a LinkedIn URL. It's always better if you have a very specific input like a URL. But here we go. We've got this company come through. 7 steps have been performed in the background. And then I've got this research report that has popped up. And I've, in a more, I guess, integrated setup, because this is a demo, essentially it will basically feed that information back into HubSpot. So you don't even have to touch the account. It comes in, and then this happens, and then afterwards it's fully researched. So I've got an exec summary, some overview points, indicators, team, etc., and all the different sources as well as to how I got that information. And if we look at a breakdown, which I'll explain in a second how that happened, you see all the different sources, right? And you think there's no like real logic as to how it's done it in terms of like there's no steps and it's not like 5 Google searches and then like 3 website scrapes. It's kind of trying a few different things. And that's because I built this very generally. So let's look into the build if I'm going to explain that. So again, this is the AI agent sort of back end, right? I've got instructions, I've got tools, knowledge, triggers, and a few other things. So this prompt over here, the instructions, is that main sort of brain slash sense of self of the agent. So I've got an objective over here, and I've basically just said, you're an account analyst. You will do comprehensive account research on a company and produce an intelligent report on it. And obviously, I've kind of wordsmithed it because we just do that with prompts for some reason, but I'm pretty sure if you kept it simple, it would work just fine as well. And then we've got a list of tools, which I'll explain in a sec as well. And these are basically the skills and abilities that I've given to the agent. And then we've got instructions. So I want it to be super clear with this agent that it will receive a company name or a LinkedIn URL to begin the research process. If I left it at just that, that'd be fine. But I did want to kind of, I guess, iterate on it. So I added a few important standards, but you can really start quite simple with these things. And then the last part is the output. So what's really important to note about this agent is I've got, a very simple instruction of you'll receive a company name and a LinkedIn URL. You have these tools at your disposal, and I've given an objective, and I said this is the output that I expect. Like this is the kind of information that I'm wanting you to find about the company. So a differentiation, and I'll bring up an example of another type of agent, which is the same agent but set up differently, is that if we look over here, this agent is super general. I've not told it to, perform this step and then this step, steps 1 to 8, right? And said you have to do this, right? I've given it tools, and so it's very agentic in the way it functions. But this one over here is pretty much the same agent, but the instructions look a little uglier, right? Like it's very in the weeds. You're going to use this tool to do this, use this tool to do that. So I just wanted to flag this right at the beginning of this sort of demo because I think it's important to note, do you want a general agent or do you want a really specific chain of events to occur? And this will also feed into what we do with AI workforces as well. Because over here, I've been a lot more selective. Let's say I know that there's a research process that works really, really well. I have to do this. Otherwise, let's say there's a certain website that we have to hit that I know is the best website to hit for that information, then I'll do it this way. If I don't, then I'll use this. So it's really up to you. Um,
And I
and
think
yeah, I
on
can,
that,
and
Ahmed, what's like this is why this is so available to business people that you've got the two approaches here, and all that you need to change is in written text, right? Which makes
yeah,
it so open. It's not about understanding different logic and changing things together. It's literally just changing these instructions, and then you have different performances that you can test against.
genuinely, it's the same tools. If you look over here, the tools on the right, and the tools over here as well. Although there's a few more, but like these main research tools, because I had a couple HubSpot things linked in, but get LinkedIn profile, find LinkedIn jobs, Google search, website search. You're seeing the exact same tools at its disposal here. It's literally the same capabilities, but we're just prompting it a little bit better. So that's the great thing.
You can think of it of like how you would onboard your employees. There's good onboardings, there's bad onboardings, and then you can you get different results from that. We've got a couple of questions with regards to the templates, Ahmed, is when we take one of these pre-built templates, or also some of the templates that you've been sharing on LinkedIn, how much tinkering is needed, or is it pretty much you can just copy and it's ready to go?
Yeah, well, it really depends, right? Like this one over here is now available on the template marketplace. And I also, some of you may know that I have been sharing templates on LinkedIn, and there's a whole repository of them as well. There is, I mean, I would encourage you to tinker with them because I mean, it really depends on what you're trying to achieve, right? Let's say I want to do general research on a company, I would use this, right? Because I don't know what I don't know. I don't really know what I want from the research process. I just want a lot of information. So maybe in that case, you don't have to tinker. And this is one of the examples of an agent where it doesn't matter too much if you tinker with it. But if you know that there's a certain data set that you need to get from a certain place, I would definitely tinker it that way. And that's where the domain expertise comes in again, right? If you have a process that you know works really well, probably best that you write that down and tinker with it. But most of the templates I share because they do work out of the box. They provide some value, but I really focus on 80/20 here, right? You know,
Yeah.
80% working pretty well, and then the rest is up to you to sort of configure and connect your accounts and things.
Yeah, because that's the one call out, right? That if, for instance, an agent needs to interact with HubSpot, you will need to go through that setup. But Relevance has made it super, super easy. In most cases, it's like using OAuth 2. So you just click a button, it'll take you to HubSpot, you sign in, you let give Relevance permission to interact with your system, and then it's good to go. But those, whenever it needs some sort of authentication, you will need to set it up after copying the template.
Exactly. Yep. And I'm seeing a few questions here as to which one performs better, and really it just depends on what your goal is, right? Like the performance is the same, and like one aspect that I want to touch on before we move on to workforces or other agents is like how do you actually change the performance of this, right? Because we've got these instructions, we've got the tools. There's really a few more sort of levers that we can pull here to affect the performance, right? So like aside from the difference between this atlas and the other atlas, we've also got our language models, right? So I did notice that if I did use, say, like Claude 3.7 Sonnet, and that is like the agent language model, right? What language model the agent is running on. You can actually pick and choose and select what you want here. The outputs can vary. I'm not saying that you're going to get any major hallucinations or anything crazy coming out with GPT-4o Mini. It still works well, but you'll maybe pick up on a few more nuances because context windows are a lot larger in, say, Claude Sonnet or GPT 4.1. And so there's really like there's cost optimized, there's performance optimized. Really depends on what kind of task you're running, how big the instructions are, etc. That's one big lever to pull. Again, the instructions and what sort of context you give it is another. Like, if you know that, let's say you trained and onboarded someone to do research, and you know that there's a certain thing that they should know because it's hard to say an example, but let's say, oh, this website says that it has the real data, but it's actually that website's usually false. You should go to this instead. If you teach the agent that, that makes a specific agent better than a general one. And on that topic, we've got knowledge, right? So the more sort of context that the agent can have if it needs it, and if you think it's actually going to be useful, the better, right? Like I can drop in files here to give it information, right? Let's say as part of the research process, I need to match it up to my company's details, right? Let's say I've got products or services or something, and I want to weigh that up and have that come out in the final report. Do you want it to read your website each time for that, or do you have a really good resource that you can plug into this so that the agent has the best information? So these are really ways we can improve these agents, and that's why going more specific will it will definitely net you better results, but it just depends on what you're trying to optimize for.
Awesome. And I think question on the choosing the LLMs as well. Matt asked, does Relevance AI provide them, or do we need to connect our own APIs and API keys?
Yeah, everything here is provided, like it's managed by Relevance. Cool thing is that if you do have an API key and you want to save on costs, you can plug in your API keys for, OpenAI, Anthropic, etc. But if you select something here right now, it's all managed by us. So you don't really need to um, like actually have OpenAI plugged in. You don't need a authenticate or anything. It's all here.
And that for me is one of the big exciting points because I've heard a good analogy that these like AI models, when you put it to an AI agent, is like the brain of the agent. And then as the models get better, it's just like having a brain with a higher IQ. So as new models come out, and if we test that they are performing better, you can simply just upgrade your agent and it also impacts performance. You're not tied to a specific model as you build it. It's just as easy as, okay, Claude have now released Claude 5 in the future. You can just go in and change your agent's model and see if it improved performance.
And not just that, like that's definitely like having this all aggregated is really useful in that way for sure. The one more thing I would add on to that is that like the costs are getting lower and lower, right? Like
Absolutely.
we used to run off like 3.5 GBT 3.5 or like even three probably at some point before I was around. And now like these are coming out, and the you can see the costs of credits and tokens. And then this will be deprecated one day in 4.5, or I mean, sorry, like 5 will come out or something, and it'll be a lot cheaper as well. So it's only getting cheaper, it's only getting better. But the IP that you've built within your agent and that you've documented your process and given it to an agent, that's always going to be there. So it's just going to get better and better.
Awesome. There was another question around the tools that the agent have access to. Are you going to touch a little bit on the tool setup, or is that diving in a bit too into too much granularity?
These tools in
Yeah,
specific.
yeah. So like, or
Yeah,
just how do you go about setting up tools in Relevance to give to the agent?
yeah, gotcha. I'll run through that in 1 second.
Perfect.
So I'm going to show you how to build an agent just like this from scratch because I think people look at this and they still see a lot of tools, a lot of text. Like, how do I choose the tools? How do I write the prompt? So I'll show you that in just one moment. Just one last thing I want to cover before we wrap this up is because I know this question would come up at some point, is how do I actually run the agent? So let's say over here, I had run the agent. This is just sort of my demo agent. So there's a lot going on that I just try things out with. But essentially, what you can do is this over here is a thread. Everything works as threads. So like a thread is like a task for the agent. And so I can create a new task over here and just give it the company name or LinkedIn URL. I can schedule in bulk, so I can give it a list of like a CSV in my knowledge table, for example, of these two things, and it will run those retrospectively. It's if you want to like bulk enrich a lot of companies. And the last part is the triggers over here. So triggers is like one, I guess, tool setup that is important to know. It's like where is the information coming from? If I want to do an automated like this is where an agent actually becomes an autopilot. I've set up HubSpot, for example. So I've set up a workflow. Every time a company's created, it comes through here, and then the agent receives it as a task. You can do it as a recurring schedule as well, if that logic makes sense for you. You can also do it as Salesforce, Google Calendar, webhooks, Zapier, etc. So I did just want to cover that as one last thing around what it actually looks like to start an agent. But if we now look at, how do I actually create these agents from scratch? How do I add the tools? How do I make the prompts? I didn't usually have this as my go-to for the first like how do I build an agent, but it's actually become quite good, so I actually might use it because it actually can create pretty much the equivalent of what I've just shown you in around a couple minutes. So what we've got here is something called Invent, and it's basically an AI agent that is trained on creating AI agents specifically with relevance. Pre this, I was just doing them from scratch and sometimes going to ChatGPT to help it to help me write the prompts. But the thing is that relevance is also built in a way where it's like, if it works for relevance, like the prompting works for relevance, you want to kind of stick to that format. So this knows how to do it. Like before, we had all these trending agents, and we still have a lot of really good agent templates that you can go with if it's like exactly what you're looking for. But we basically got the best practices of prompting for all these and also all the tool templates that we have. We've got a huge reservoir of like 1,000, or sorry, thousands of tools. Basically, this agent here knows how to use all of that to make what you want, come true. So let's say I want an AI agent that researches a company and produces a report. Super basic prompt. One of the problems was that your use case could be super specific, and would this actually cover it? Could you write enough to actually teach this thing to write, to write and create the best agent for you? And so now what we've got it to do is actually test and iterate with you. So it asks you some follow-up questions. It actually identifies, when it needs more information or not. So which sources should the agent use for research? What format do you want the report in? So I'll give it something super basic. This is where your domain expertise comes in. Maybe you know the sorts of things that work really well. Which sources should the agent use? Let's say company, website, LinkedIn page, news, Google, recent funding, etc. Um, just give me a written report. And so what's happening is sometimes I got to get this guy to go to his desk to cook up the agent. No, it'll still work, don't worry. But it's basically going to prepare a long prompt for us, and it's going to be written here, and then it's going to actually suggest the different tools that would ideally work. And we can chat back and forth with the inventor. So just noting that if it doesn't get it right the first time, you can always test and iterate. And there's also a co-pilot feature within like an already built agent, but this is just a good start, right? Again, kind of just getting us to that 80, 70, 80% point so that we don't have to start from, completely scratch. So looking over here, I've got a prompt and it pretty much follows very similarly the structure of how I built Atlas. So we got role and objective. Again, we got instructions, research steps, so website, LinkedIn, Google search, industry trends, and then there's that output again. So that output is really important, right? How do we actually fill out this thing here? And so these orange things here are placeholders. So that is what the agent thinks the tools should be. I can go ahead and click accept all, and then it should add in the tools. So it's right now adding in the recommended tools and it's starting to fill these in. If I can't find it here, I can actually just look through and there we go. And for really, really niche use cases, if you give it a good enough prompt, it can create a tool for you. So you can actually use this invent feature for specific tools as well, for like really specific ones. But super basic right now, all we've got is this. I won't add knowledge. I'll probably just save this as it is because we've got a pretty good prompt already. If there are certain things that you want to add in later, or if you're building this thing from scratch, there's obviously all the different ways you can add tools as well over here. Like if I add tool, there's a huge library of different tools. These are the most popular ones. So Google searches, language models, API calls, notes, etc. Just your real basic stuff. And then if we go into the different apps, we've got Gmail, so all these different pre-built Gmail steps, popular CRMs like HubSpot. Where is it?
It's always the beauty of the live screen share. Everything takes a little
Yeah,
bit
it's always
longer.
the lives. Yeah.
Yeah, but
I
we see it
promise you it
also
is
on
there.
the left-hand side as well.
Yeah, in the template gallery it is here. It's probably just a visual thing because I'm in front of a large audience right now. But as you can see, there's all these tools, HubSpot, and you can just clone those in.
And I think
HubSpot,
maybe
Salesforce.
Ahmed, it's a good time because there's lots and lots of questions around how does this compare to Make AI agents, N8N, Lindy. So I've obviously got an opinion on that as well, but would love to hear your thoughts first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, all really great platforms, and we're not trying to dethrone anyone here. I think each platform has their own use case, but they're ultimately built for one, different use cases, and two, different types of users. So let's start with, say, Make and Zapier because those have been around for a really long time. And I would say that those platforms, although they position now that they have AI agents, inherently their logic is very deterministic and very sort of node-based. So the experience is and has been built from the ground up to be, this happens and then this happens next. And then off of that, maybe these two things happen. And so it's very if conditional logic. And look, some people like building off of nodes and conditional logic. And some tasks actually don't require AI agents. So that's totally fine too. But that's just what you're getting, right? You're getting sort of chain-based events, very conditional logic. You have to lay it all out. Not to mention that it can be a little bit more technical. And I just mean like a smidge more technical because these AI agents on, say, Relevance, they actually know how to use the tools. So I'll explain a bit more about that in a second. but there's certain inputs, certain connectors between the tools. The agents in something like Relevance actually think about how to use the tools per the task and then do the work of thinking and doing it. Versus Make and Zapier, you actually have to map it all out and do it all up front. So again, it depends on what you're building. Very simple, like very linear automations. I would actually, yeah, I'd encourage people to use Make and Zapier. Really good. N8N is sort of in between, I would say. And you can call me Ion if I'm sort of saying it wrong here, but like N8N is primarily also more so on the deterministic sort of chain-based side of things, but they do have a really good AI agent offering as well. The difference is that it is aimed at a lot more technical users. And this is something that they openly advertise as well. So it is aimed at people who are developers, or I guess enthusiasts who are willing to learn. It's really not that hard either, but it's really something that is you have to do all the mapping yourself. The AI agents utilize tools sort of outside, versus in Relevance, the tools live within the agent. The agent understands the tools, understands how to use them. So these are quite hard to explain without visuals, but I hope that did make sense or
Yeah,
address some of the things. It's really like who's using it,
absolutely.
who do you want to use it, and what are you using it for?
Absolutely. And like maybe just add a couple of things on that. So us at 9X, we actually use all of them. We have Zapier, Make, N8N, Relevance, Lindy. It's also a part of, because we're educating people on this, so we need to use all the tools. One thing that I would call out as well is, so a couple of things. First of all of these platforms, obviously there's like a monthly cost involved, but eventually it all comes down to credit-based usage. So the more you use, the more workflow runs, the more you pay. And actually, this means is that you're not limited to only using one, and you don't need to make these decisions. For instance, a lot of our relevance agents are sometimes triggered by Make workflows because Make has the ideal trigger that we need to use, and then we can actually go, as Ahmed said before, you can trigger an agent programmatically. So we could have a Make scenario that triggers a relevance agent. And I would always encourage you to look at like what are the tools that your agent needs, because for instance, what Relevance have done a really, really good job at is everything is in the one platform. So there are some tools already made for an agent to go and visit a website. Whereas with Make and N8N, what you typically need to use is to sign up for another service like Appify, for instance, create an account and set that up. Everything is possible in all of these platforms. It does just become a little bit in terms of what are you comfortable with and what integrations do you need and which platforms has the simplest integrations, right? I think Relevance have done also a really good job of adding some new LinkedIn triggers, which it's not just the LinkedIn API, you're doing something on top of it and making it really easy. So think, does my agent need to browse the web? Should it go to LinkedIn? Or is it more, I want an agent triggered when someone fills a form on my website? The platform you choose will be different depending on your use case.
Yeah. And one more thing that I would add, and this will become more evident when we look at the workforces soon, is because I know that there's going to be a number of people here that are maybe looking to upskill because they actually want to build and sell these services as well as, say, implementation or agency. Think about, who is your end client, who's your end user, or even if you're just building this for your company, for example, who's actually going to be using this thing. If you're building something on a technical interface and you don't expect that people want to interface with it later, it just needs to work, then that's obviously, makes API and NN are fine. But let's say this process of research over here, if I go back into the prompt, let's say I'm handing this over to a sales representative, or like I made them an email writer and I'm handing it over to them. If they want to test and iterate on it, like if they want to change the outputs or change the process or anything like that, and let's say I'm a developer that built it for them, they have to keep coming back and forth to me to do that. That is one way you can work with it. Or if you have something like Relevance where it's built out and they can sort of do that themselves, then the end user, right, suddenly is like able to actually work on the thing themselves. So it's like, what are you optimizing for, right? If you want people to actually be able to use the end solution and play around with it and make edits, this kind of thing does make it easier. So that's just one more thing that I would keep in mind too.
Alrighty, then should we get into the next step?
Let's do it. Yeah. So a couple other things that I wanted to show. I guess this would be a really good segue into like the workforce side of things.
Yeah.
I've got a demo environment of what I call kind of like a dream team of agents. There's a lot going on in my account, as you would imagine, but there's quite a number of agents that I've like built out that I've just given people as templates, or some I've maybe gate kept, but I'll release soon. Let's say we've got, I'll bring up a few over here. So drawing on from, let's say, this account research agent, right? That we just went into before. There are other layers and other processes that you can add to it. So, for example, I made this agent that is a qualifier. And so what that means is it's pretty much the same agent in that it does research, but at the end, there is now a new tool that actually qualifies an account based off of criteria. So people think that that's like a super advanced agent you need, but really I've just put through a criteria over here of what I think makes a good company. And so I've just written it in plain text. Provide a score from 1 to 5 stars about this, this, and that. This is a great company. This is a decent company. This is not great in terms of maybe size or the prospect's job title or industry. The purpose behind this could be anything, right? It could be, let's say you've researched 10,000 companies, but you only want to outreach 1,000 companies because you don't want to burn your email, right? And so you want to pick the best ones. You can actually sift through all of those and actually start to assign a score to them. Another use case, which is probably a little bit more popular and more crucial, is let's say someone comes through as an inbound demo at your company, right? So, in like a sales perspective, they fill out a form. I want to basically research them, find out if they're, worth giving a demo to, or who, which rep gets the demo. Are they an enterprise customer, etc. So I'm using that same research process now, but I added one more step, which is qualify, prospect, and account. So that's a tool where I've basically got the all the information that was researched pinned against this criteria, and we basically enriched the prospect. So it went from this over here to a lot more information about them, and I've got an evaluation and a star rating. So just another possibility of what you can do, because we're really starting to look into, okay, like what's the breadth of this? So where would I go to from here? Let's say I've got this prospect, they're 5 stars. How would I, take action on that next? So let's say I've got over here this prospect pilot as well. I actually want to go into this. It's pretty much the same, but it's a prospect researcher. We've got Emilio, the email expert. So this is another thing that we get asked about is, can I send emails? Can I write emails? How good are they? How do I chain this up to my research process? So let's say now I've got this email expert, and all this email expert really is a an agent that is prompted on how to write emails very well. So we're talking about a very specific sort of job to be done here. So I don't want this agent to be good at anything else because I'm going to be connecting it with the other agents in a workforce. But the instructions is it will receive some kind of a prospect, some kind of research, and a research agent will give it that research. And all the instructions here are this is how you write emails. So if you're wondering how to do this, I've got a tool that can help you write these guidelines, or you can ask ChatGPT to write them. You basically just give all your emails, or you can custom write this as well if you want. Because as we know, if you ask ChatGPT to write you emails without any prompting, they're pretty bad. So we're trying to emulate our composition guidelines here. So I got these guidelines, I've got a personalization process, some examples, etc. The idea is that now I have created an emailer. So this agent, it just creates really good emails based on what I give it. And so there's a lot of use cases for this that I'll go into in a second. With this particular sort of guideline written, I can now scale this to a bunch of different types of agents. So let's look into these two. Number one, I've got an agent called Iris. So what Iris does, so I'm freezing up for a second. I've got a lot of tabs open. Uh, can you all see this okay?
Yeah, it's just jumped. I think we're good. We're
Yeah.
back on.
Okay, we're back. So yeah, let's say I've got this inbox informant. Every time I receive an email in my inbox, as we see, we've got the same exact composition guidelines. So all that's written. This agent basically has an objective, and that is you will get an email, and I want you to, based on that email, draft a reply. And I've given a lot of context about myself, my company, etc. So this agent knows how to email as if it was me, but I've even given it some liberty to do some research if it needs to. So if I go into run and I look at an example task, I'll just try and find one that's appropriate to show you. Let's say I received this email over here from someone called Jack about We're building a customer support agent, had a few questions, can agents escalate, etc. We now have the skills of the email writing plus research and some steps to perform. So it's actually gone and found the answer for me and then has created a draft in terms of a Gmail email. So it actually answers this question. So it provides a draft email. And there's a lot of like custom written support. There's even links and everything like that too. So this can actually pop up in my inbox. So when I receive the email a couple minutes later, there is a draft waiting for me. And so I open up my Gmail and it's right there. And so that's the cool thing that you can do once you've built out an email agent of some kind, you can start to chain it to different triggers, right? Like this is triggered off of a Gmail. The other trigger, for example, is I have a meeting, and throughout that meeting, I receive some sort of notes. So this is triggered by Google Mail, and as you can see, it's the exact same agent with the same composition guidelines and everything like that. Um, and basically takes a transcript and it knows what we talked about. It knows what I told them I was going to send them, etc. And then it's drafted a follow-up email that it's put in my drafts. And over here, as we see, I promised them I'd send them some resources, a link to an agent, tutorial, etc., and even some answers to some questions that I'd given them. So it's like a really good wrap up. And so, yeah, again, this is just a super useful thing. So the pattern that I'm trying to show you here is kind of like scale, right? You don't want to be building like an agent for everything. We wanted to build like different functions, right? Like that account research agent, I can then scale that across account research, prospect research, and then qualification. And then I can even add it as like a general researcher that works with an email agent. And then that email agent can be triggered by a meeting transcript that just came up, writes a follow-up email. Or an email just comes into my inbox. It writes an email to reply to them, etc. And then you can even scale this to cold outreach. So if I pull up, say, an example, and I just form this as a very simple example, as like a small intro to you as to like what the workforce is. So this is what our workforce builder looks like. Let's say I get a manual message of, and just manual for a demo, where a prospect comes in. So let's look at that live. I want to, there's, Damesh Shah, HubSpot, LinkedIn.com /Damesh. That's his LinkedIn URL. I basically want to send an email to him, right? So I've got an email agent, right? And I've got this prospect researcher. So how are they going to work together? Usually I'd have to like really map this out and make it really specific and sort of actions and nodes and things like that. But what I've actually done is I've told Emilio that, Emilio, you're good at writing emails. That's what you do. But if you need research to be done, Pluto's the one that does that. And mind you, like really simple decision making because it's just two agents. But over here, you see Emilio has spoken to Pluto. He said, research Damesh, and then I'll write him an email. So that's what Pluto did. Google searched, LinkedIn profile, etc. Produced this research report. And then over here, gone back to Emilio. Based on the research, here's a personalized cold outreach email for Damesh. And then bam. Saw a recent post, this, some sort of problem statement, some social proof, etc. That's just how I've programmed the email to be written. And so there we go. That's how it works. And just to answer your question in the chat around how I configured these two agents to work together, there really honestly wasn't much to it. It just knows like there is this email writer, there is Pluto. In the email writer, I basically said, when you receive this, just delegate it to some sort of research agent. And I've just put that in the instructions. If you want to build this for more scale, because there's different ways you can build it, you can even remove this and just have it over here. So I guess I'll segue this into introing how this workforce builder works, right? We basically have agents that we can just pull in, right? Let's say that agent we just built, add them in here, connect them. And I can do all sorts of agents. I can even pull in tools if I just want to use tools. The key is that we've got a message, just like that chat that we talked about at the start, where we create a new chat thread. I can add other triggers as well, like Gmail, as I just shown you before, connect my account and adjust some settings if I want to, queue up some work hours if I want to, set that up. So now these two things can trigger this. So let's say I, send an email to Emilio, example, and say, hey, Emilio, I need you to send an email to this person. Emilio will send that email if Emilio has the information, but if he doesn't, he'll go to these different research agents. Maybe if it's a company, it'll send it to Rena. If it's a prospect, it's Pluto. So the cool thing about this is that these agents have objectives and have descriptions, right? Like just over here. This one researches companies, this one researches prospects. Oftentimes, this is enough because Emilio will realize that it doesn't have any research on the person. So it'll look for some way to, fill in that gap. And that's what it will do. But if you do want to be really specific, that's where you go into these little nodes over here. So let's say connection type, I can configure it to be, a forced next step if I want. But actually, I mean, I might just keep it as an AI connection, label the connection if I want to, but also say instructions for how to use when asked to do research on a prospect. Or I can say, or if there is no, uh, if there's not enough info to draft a good email. And so yeah, if you want to be super specific to make sure that this all works well, like if this is client facing, I would probably add a little bit more logic in there. But yeah, essentially, as per the last comment, yeah, you do want to avoid that situation. So I would be pretty careful about just like letting this run as it is. But just as an example, especially if it's like internal stuff, this is a really basic way to just set this up. And so
Nice.
when we start to get real specific, that's a different story.
And Ahmed, just a couple of questions on the when you're on the like Emilio, the email expert, the prompt that we see there, is that the same as Emilio's like core instructions, or you basically have the agent's core instructions, and then you can in this workforce builder view add additional prompts? How does that work?
It is the same agent. So this is exactly the same. So like basically this is just a zoomed out view of all the agents, and then you can zoom in on each agent. And so like w what we incorporated was that you can actually edit the agents the same way that where is Emilio? He's somewhere.
So that means in
Um,
this case, Emilio would always need a research agent since it's got in its instructions, delegate to the research agent. So Emilio would always need it, or could there be some cases where Emilio can just work by themselves and other cases where they Emilio can connect with a research agent?
That's how I built it, was I always knew that it was going to have a research agent, but that's just a demonstration. So I can delete
Gotcha.
that and just have it as a general email agent. But I just happen to build this particular one for outbound.
Gotcha.
But yeah, you can totally just have like a really basic piece. And like what this is doing is basically manually putting in what the connection was here.
Gotcha.
I just I'm
Sort
just
of like
showing the two.
reinforcement, right? So if you know it always will have one, then you can put it in, but it could just as well work if you just use that AI connection and give it the brief in there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like this over here and this are pretty much like the same in terms of like weight of instruction.
Gotcha.
It's just that like if you want to be super specific, you can be. But yeah, that's just the two ways that I would do it.
And is there, because similar like in agents, how we can pick the which model is running in the workforce, is it has like relevance picked which AI model makes these decisions? Or is it like since the AI connection, like let's say if Emilio was using Claude and Pluto was using O4, which one would be used when deciding when to delegate?
It's actually a really good question around what language model is used in the overarching.
Yeah,
I'm actually not too sure. You've called me out on that. In terms of just these little connectors, what I can answer, like for the most part, when it comes to delegation, if it's in here or if
yeah,
it's in here, like it does use the model that the agent has.
makes sense.
So
Yep.
yeah, um, I imagine that the connections are probably something like a cost optimized model, just because they're such small instructions. I don't think it would matter too much. Because with GPT-4o Mini, for example, really cheap, really simple, like really basic instructions, it doesn't fail. It's really good. But yeah, like delegation, this would be based off of this one's logic, and this would be based off of this logic, etc.
Super nice, man. Maybe just to double down for everyone, like why this is so impactful and important is right now, like Emilio basically holds the knowledge of what a good written email looks like. And as we know, working for companies, things change all the time. And imagine if for instance, into Pluto, the prospect pilot, you coded in there what does a good written email look like, and then you had another agent for another use case, you code in there what a good written email looks like and scale that across to maybe 20, 30 agents. When it comes the time that actually like maybe our company's tone of voice has changed, or maybe the way we like putting the footers of our emails has changed, if you coded this into every single agent, you would need to go into all 60 agents and update those. And then you end up having very like inconsistencies in the output. Whereas by using these multi-agent systems, you have one email agent that says, okay, this is what good looks like. And as that changes, you just need to tweak this one agent, and you know that immediately basically rolls out into all the agent workforces that you have set up.
Yeah, one of the most common requests that we get is a BDR agent. And a lot of people think that it's just one agent, but obviously every company's BDR process is very different and all the
Absolutely.
different agents are very different. And I think a lot of people also ask me, is like, how do I think about building agents in terms of, how general should this one agent be? Like, how much should it be allowed to do or delegated to do versus should I have seven different agents? And I think you've answered it perfectly. It's that think about when something changes or when something breaks, like what are we going to do then? Or like let's say if I want to test and iterate on a process, right? Like let's say our research was really good, but our email was really bad, or there's like three or four different things that are being done and one of them was bad. But if they're all in one entire agent, that's super hard to diagnose. There might be a lot of hallucination because of a lot of context, and it's really hard for us to test and iterate on that. Not just because it's a really large prompt, but it's just, yeah, it just makes the situation real tricky. If we can build in a modular fashion like this, like I was thinking of building a huge marketing team for one of my next builds. There actually was one, just as you mentioned, like a brand tone of voice agent, and that's it. That's what the agent does. And you'd think to yourself, like that's not a very useful agent on its own. But if all the agents would refer to that agent for the tone of voice, like that's a really useful way of thinking about it because then I don't have to change it in every other agent. Same thing with Emilio, right? And to be honest, I could have set up my other agents like Iris and Freddie and such to be in a more scalable way. I'm just a bit lazy, I suppose. But I could have Emilio really be the email expert for all of them. And if I want to change the guidelines, it just so happens I found ones that just worked pretty out the box. But I would change those on Emilio, and then everything else would just change automatically. So it really is just a really good way of thinking about it. And so when I go around like and try to make this sort of dream team of agents, each one's got a different job to be done, right? Like account research, prospect research, email writing, LinkedIn writing, right? And then all these other ones. So really modular. And one thing that people always wonder is like, is there just one of these, or like if I've got a really big workforce, can I add Amelia multiple times? The answer is yes. Like you can find Amelia over here and then put them in as like multiple parts of the process. Like maybe Emilio is used again, or like if you had a much deeper sort of org chart, Emilio could be used multiple times. So that's another thing to consider as well.
Yeah. I think there's a really interesting question on this as well from Tabitha asking, can't you just create a library of knowledge so that basically every agent can refer to, and that way if you change your tone of voice, all you need to do is change the knowledge file. One thing that I would always recommend, and you're sort of pointing it out here, is you're far better off having agents serving very single purpose. And sometimes there's an issue of like giving agents too much context. For instance, Pluto, the prospect agent, has no need to know what your tone of voice is because their job is simply researching prospects, right? And you're still probably better off. I think using a knowledge file could still be valuable, but you'd always want to have an agent that you give specific instructions to how it should interact with that knowledge base, right? So there could still be a use case for knowledge for your tone of voice, but you still probably want to have a tone of voice agent where you can give those next level instructions because maybe your knowledge file now contains 6, 7 pieces that you want the agent to refer to and use that to frame its tone of voice. That will change. And by having an agent connected rather than every single agent connected to that knowledge base will again run into issues. I don't know, Ahmed, if you see it the same way.
No, I absolutely agree, and you've got me thinking now. And I haven't really implemented in the tone of voice side of things yet, but you could use knowledge. You really could. If you look over here, there is account level knowledge, and I could create a table and basically add whatever I want to that. And I could selectively give certain agents access to the knowledge if they needed it. So you could do it that way. I suppose an agent could be better, like that owns the tone of voice because what we're talking about when we talk about like AI workforces, agents, swarms, we want to treat them like they're specialists in their job to be done. And if there is an agent that consumes the tone of voice, it can much better like sort of converse with other agents, right? Because agents actually will like send a message to each other. Like you saw the messaging over here. So I've lost it now. Yeah, you saw over here that the agent actually like wrote a message to the other agent. And so if one agent can own the tone of voice, it can query the knowledge itself, find the appropriate knowledge, come back, and then give the agent its response. Versus you'd have to instruct an agent on how to use knowledge as well. Like it's not that straightforward, especially when you've got a lot of it. If it's just one page though, yeah, fine. That's totally no worries.
And maybe one question that we also discussed recently, Ahmed, is on this setup, how do you decide which agent is sort of the main one running the task and which one is the delegator? Because this same system could be set up that actually you have Pluto, the prospect pilot, get given the task, and then Pluto outsources to Emilio just when it's time to write the email, versus the other way around of in the end, Emilio, an email needs to be sent, but you need to get research, so outsource to Pluto. Is there a difference? Can we do it both ways, or how do you like to think about it?
You can. Yeah, it's a tough question to answer because it's really a preference thing. For me, I like the agent that is executing the final task
Yep.
to be sort of the main one receiving the message. And it's escaping me as to the exact reason because it's just data sets that I've had over a while. I've just realized that it works better. But I believe let's say this message goes to Pluto and then Pluto goes back to Emilio, and then Emilio goes back to Pluto again, and then it goes back to Emilio, because Pluto will receive like a prompt, and I don't know, it just gets complicated. But basically, I want Emilio to be the one
Right.
sending the email,
See.
and so I prioritize Emilio being the one conducting the whole process of like putting together that email.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I see it the same way. You think about it also if you're delegating to a person in your team and you're like, whoever has to do the final task is typically who you would delegate it, who you would give the task to. And then it's up to them to realize, I don't have enough information. I need to like rely on colleagues, but the task is given to, like you said, whoever's responsible in the final outcome. And in this case, the final outcome is sending an email. Therefore, like Emilio is sort of the master agent.
Yeah, yeah, that's a much better put way of explaining it. Yeah, it's basically like if you were to think about how it would work in an organization, you'd give the task to someone, not to five people who would then report to the last person.
Yeah.
You'd say, here it is to just one orchestrator, and then you go off and talk to this person, that person, then come back, and then you collate the final thing. So
Cool.
I suppose that's how I sort of thought about this. Maybe it's just inherent because that's how sort of human dynamics work, right?
Yeah.
So if there's ever like a fallback that you need, I think that's a really good one.
That makes sense. We have a load of questions, but is there, I just want to make sure that we get enough time to cover what you wanted to show. Is there another workforce or setup that you want to go into?
Yeah, there's a couple other workforces. One that I get asked about is a lot is this the 42 agents, but I can't really go into like the specifics of them, so I'll show some other examples. I'll give you a brief like preview of it. But it just contains a lot of like company data, so I can't do a lot
Gotcha.
of the sort of looking around at it. But
And
this is
is,
what
is
like
this a production system being used at Relevance or for one of your clients?
Relevance. So we've
Relevance.
got a bunch of these agents, and this is a bit experimental as well, in that we've got a lot of these live, and some of them are like sort of experimental as well. And we're just sort of showing capabilities, but like this is an example of what it would look like to create, a very advanced system with a chief sales officer that orchestrates, and then sort of directors, right? This is kind of your gold standard, that we're starting to build out in workforce. Context is that we didn't always have workforce builder, but we've always had agents and sub-agents and multi-agent systems. We've just now put it into this canvas. So this is me just displaying what it actually looks like. Andrea, I can't say if they're reaching their quotas because we pay them in credits. So, but yeah, the idea is that you start to look at teams like there is one person, maybe one agent that you interface with, and then multiple directors and things like that. But this this workforce, these agents right now as they are, is just like a canvas at the moment to just show you like a gold standard of what it looks like to build.
And
But what I'll show you,
obviously, just
yeah.
one thing on one, because I think it's good while you have this view up. Obviously, within the agents themselves, you have this like non-deterministic agentic tool calling. But obviously, when it comes to a workforce, at the moment, it is very top down, so that the orchestrator always needs to be given the task. Or is it possible, even a system that someone on like the third tier of this could ever be the first person to act after a trigger, and actually they report up before delivering the final task? Or you'd need to set that up as a separate workforce in relevance.
Yeah, so it really depends on the size of the workforce. Like, I'll bring one out now that's a little bit more palatable for you. And so let's say we've got this one here.
Yeah,
This in its own right, like, fully deserves to just be its own workforce. It just makes complete sense. Like, we've got an AI BDR manager, a sales strategist, which is just like a researcher, outreach, follow up, appointment setting, like message reply. So basically, the function of researching, the function of managing the outreach, if someone replies or if someone doesn't reply to follow up, or like if someone does reply, here's the kind of thing we tell them, right? And if I need calendars, then I go to appointment setter. Like, this is a much more palatable way of doing it. I would suggest that you probably work on something like this to start with, because it just makes a lot more sense in that it's way easier to diagram out. Obviously, with something like the 42 agents, that can be configured in prompting to really like delegate to, like, let's say there is a vague request that belongs in the outreach sector, or a vague request that belongs in the enablement sector, or anything like that. And so maybe then that goes to the director, and the director will then take the full prompt and sort of make some more sense out of it. But at that point, like, you got to really weigh up: are you making more work for the agents, or are you making it easier for yourself? So it just depends. Like, do you think your message will be diluted down the chain? The good thing is that, like, it's not really like a like, messages don't get diluted as much as they do in like a real organization if you were to pass it between like seven people, because the language is just being passed through. But yeah, like something like the 42 agents, like, we've built that as maybe separate workforces. I've just displayed it as one big
yeah,
canvas to show you, but it might be better that you do build it like this.
gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah. One more workforce that I'll show you, because I realize we've just been talking about sales, but there's actually one more that I'll show you, and then we can just go into questions, because I think we've got around 20 or so minutes left. Is this content writing workforce that I made, because this involves just a few more agents, and I actually can show you just some live examples of it. And I thought it was pretty cool, because they are pretty basic agents, but they each have like their own sort of value offering, and you can start with something very, very, very simple, like a very simple manual message, like write a post about the ROI of AI agents for marketing teams in 2025. And then so I'll show you the org chart at the start. We have this agent over here. The real concept of this was, I have an idea. I want to create posts for many different platforms about that idea. And so this one over here basically just questions your ideas, right? Very simple. It's low-key just a GPT wrapper. It asks you some pointed questions to just flesh out your ideas, understand more about what you're trying to write, get you to think about it a little bit more as well, especially if it's just like one very simple sentence. And then this agent over here is a master copy crafter that basically takes your post, and according to a lot of different conventions of virality that I did some research on, it basically helps make that post into something like that will hopefully pop off on social media. And it also has the ability whereabouts is it? To research online. So I said, decide if any information would make this even better. So you have these three tools, use them if you want. So again, very agentic setup.
And
And
just
then
to
we
maybe just
delegate.
to double down, sorry, on this, Ahmed, is like in what's happening now is like Socrates will only invoke, let's say, Cicero once those ideas have been fleshed out, right? It's like, because you look at it here like it's a chain that always happens, but it's really not the case. Like you said, you share your first idea. There will be this back and forth because it's maybe what we haven't seen so far, and there were some questions in it about can you also use chat as an interface, and it's actually one of Relevance's stronger points. So
Yeah,
you'll be chatting with, it's like you're chatting on Slack with a coworker who's helping you with this. They will only pass you on once it's decided that it's ready to do so.
exactly. And look, I mean, you can edit the prompt of Socrates, like I did for this example, because I wanted to film this as well for something. I did say just ask three questions and that's it,
Yeah.
and then just pass off the rest. But you can say like keep challenging me, and maybe Socrates, in his own nature, will just keep asking you forever. Maybe you don't want that, so we'll have it pass over to Cicero after like a couple of questions.
Yeah.
And then Cicero once we're basically just taking a raw idea that is like one line or something really small, creating it into something that is a lot more substantive, and now repurposing it to a lot of different platforms. And so what's cool about this is that I'm basically over here repurposing text to LinkedIn, X, newsletter, so like some sort of short form slash longer form text. We've got some video scripts and things as well. And we've also got like image generation, like ChatGPT's image gen API is available on Relevance. So I can actually craft an image prompt and then generate art. And then I can go and save all of this to Google Docs. And so the cool thing is I've made one agent that just does that and then connected all the agents over to that one that can then just do that for me and make sure everything's stored. So if I go into the run over here, I asked it to write a post, gave it like nothing to work with really, and then asked me a couple questions. I was also very lazy and didn't give it all that much, but that's on purpose because I wanted Cicero to do some research. And then Cicero went and did that. So Socrates has said, here is a a vague idea of what we think might be good to work with. I want you to go and research online, find some information. So that's what Cicero did. Perform some searches on Google, some statistics on marketing, and obviously you don't have to read through this, but we've got all these results, and then got some content from like Sprout Social, from some other places as well, and then gone to Ovid. So Ovid is that first repurposer. Please repurpose my article. So it's received like this big content brief, and over here we can start to see there was an input and then there was an output. So LinkedIn repurposed. Um, and obviously in each of these agents and tools, you can just change the tone and things to like match what it is that you do and how you
And
write.
just a question on this in terms of like how it works, of who has access to what. So Socrates will only ever, let's say, get the context of the output of the different agents and their tools. Look, wouldn't necessarily know the work that was done, or like the let's say the orchestrator agent also knows the different decisions that the sub agents made.
So at this point, the orchestrator is not really involved anymore, just because of the
Gotcha.
way that I've set up the org structure.
Yeah,
Like,
makes sense.
whoops, yeah, like Socrates is kind of tapped out for the moment,
Yeah.
but
So
because
delegated, and then the others are taking over, basically.
yeah, but because he's at the top of the chain, he does come back into the loop later, but kind of just to give us an update of, hey, we did it, right?
Yeah,
The
makes
job
sense.
is complete. So you'll see him at the bottom. He'll come back. But essentially, Ovid does all that work, repurposes, and then just does this stuff, and then talks to Xenophon. And Xenophon's like, okay, I've created these Google Sheets, even sends me some links to them and titles them in a certain way. And then Ovid uh, has provided the update, all done. And now we've got that agent coming back and being like, okay, I want you to now generate an image. So that the movement is really like Socrates to Cicero, then Cicero to Ovid, back. It's kind of like this, right?
Yeah.
And then yeah,
And then this is where I guess the experimentation comes in of like, oh, does it make sense like this, or is it make sense if Ovid is directly talking to, what's the name there? The one creating the images, and I guess that's where the
um,
creativity comes from in setting up these workforces.
I'm just a bit of a classics junkie, so
Yeah,
yeah. Sorry, Elena. Look, I'll be honest. There is no best practice on how to build these, and I was kind of toying with this for a couple hours. So I will say, like, don't be intimidated that like you have to build this kind of thing the right way because there is no right way. Like you could build this probably like seven, eight different ways, and it
sure.
would work just as well. So no stress about any of that. You could even find a way to build this all into one agent. No worries. A part of this just kind of looked cool to me as well. Um, but then, yeah, like we'll see that I have a fear that the image that I generated is going to be expired, but because it's a link. But
Yeah,
Ptolemy uses this input of the content brief, creates an output that is specifically trained to, as you can see here, like actually prompt image gen in a way
gotcha.
that image gen likes it. Some advice I would give is that if you want to create prompts for ChatGPT, ask ChatGPT to do it because ChatGPT knows how to prompt
Yeah,
itself because it is itself. So like that answer over here is like perfect for creating an image. And over here, it's gone and created this output. It will probably be a forbidden link because it's expired. So I won't hold out on you. Let's do it together.
nice.
So let's say I go into this tool, we test it out. It'll create an agent. It'll create an image. So I can run the tool. Um, anyway, while that's running, I'll show you the rest of it. So again, goes back to Xenophon, all that's stored, and then Cicero goes to Plutarch, and then Plutarch creates the. I think there's a bit of an error here for some reason, but we've got Instagram Reels created, some hooks and everything as well.
Super nice.
If that's your thing, TikToks, etc. And then yeah, I'm not sure what happened here, but maybe my tool was broken or something. Or LLM has exceeded the number of tokens. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there, to be honest with you, but these things do happen. Anyway, if we go back to image gen, it should be loading in now. This is one of those things where it's super experimental, and that I just
Absolutely.
made for fun, so bear that in mind as well. How this works, by the way, in the back while I'm showing you, is I've basically got these inputs that are being carried into this text image generation block that we've got.
And so just to cover for people that maybe aren't so familiar with it, typically whenever you're using an API to create an image for you, whether that's now the new ChatGPT models or other ones, typically what they'll give you is a link that is basically has only like a certain amount of validity. So it expires
Yeah,
after maybe 24 hours. And then in your automated workflow in your agent, what you'll need to do is make sure you actually download that image programmatically and store it somewhere, whether that's in your Google Drive, in Dropbox, and that's how a lot of these work. But super nice.
yeah. It's actually not the worst image either. ROI.
Absolutely.
There
It's
is,
you
yeah.
know it's about AI agents and you know it's about ROI, so I think that perfectly fits.
Yes,
And it
indeed.
seems like they all have the right amount of fingers on their hands, which is always a good pass mark.
I'm impressed, honestly. That kind of looks like me as well a little bit when I had shorter hair. Um, okay, so yeah, we basically have an image prompt. It's created this, and yeah, I think with the setup of how this was, we'd have a Google Doc where everything would be saved. So that's again like the ideal thing that you want to do, which is I think what it did do anyway. And then at the end, Cicero kind of Socrates delivers a message to Cicero saying this is all complete over here. Again, I'm not sure what happened with the YouTube, but it didn't happen in the past. I think
But
it's
one,
just one
one
of
thing
those.
to say, what's really nice from my experience with relevance as well is sometimes some systems will fail, but what's good is the whole agent didn't just stop, right? It's like realized,
Yeah,
hey, I can keep doing my TikTok stuff. It's the same as an employee. Sometimes you might have a problem with a certain system which stops you from doing it. In true automation, what would happen is the automation will give you an error and like you'd get no output. Whereas here you can see it's actually trying multiple times and giving you everything it can. It's like, okay, YouTube's down right now, or there's some issues, but here's the TikTok reel, here's the Instagram, and then obviously you can chat with the output and finally get that YouTube output afterwards. But
yeah.
it's not a case of like 0 or 100.
And one thing to note is, let's say I go into Socrates, and because let's say Socrates is like the main communicator, what I can do is in the build, I can add in escalations and put in Slack or email or something like that, so that it can actually tell me that the error has occurred and that something needs my attention. And in the prompt, I can suggest that it needs to rerun the tool if needed, like 3 times maximum. So you can put a cap as well. You can say don't rerun. Let's say it's a credit heavy thing and you don't want it to rerun. You can do that too. But the point is that it can escalate and that you can sort of be in the loop. And that's the whole thing, right? These AI workforces are great and we're still building them and we're still honing and iterating on them. The key thing is to have the human in the loop. But that's the big
Absolutely.
change. It's that we used to be the agents were in the loop and we were the main sort of conductors. Now we're giving power to them, but it's always good to, have them seek our approval sometimes or escalate to us when needed.
Absolutely. And I really think it's also a case with like image generation. Obviously, now you can really tell. I think the models are getting better, but you can still tell that it's an AI generated image. But even like, let's say if you, as a part of your brand, you don't want to have any AI generated images, what's still perfect is giving this as like a mock-up to a designer to say, hey, like this could be a direction, right? It means they're still not starting from zero. It doesn't mean that you have your agent immediately publish the LinkedIn post with an image that might have an error in it and text that isn't well formatted, but it's way better than the empty page syndrome of like, what do we post next?
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same with posting and writing. Like I've created an agent that has taken a lot of my old posts and helps me to at least get to like 60,
Yeah,
70%. I never release anything that is fully AI generated. I just wouldn't, but it just helps me to understand and have a structure ready so I can start editing it and everything. So we're basically aiming here to just get to from idea to execution as quickly as possible. And these are the kinds of things that can really speed that all up.
yeah. This is super exciting. I think I've already got many ideas. So is this, for instance, this little Greek philosopher's workforce a template that you can share as well, or you still need to flesh this out a little bit?
I have shared it. I
Nice.
don't again I don't know what happened to it with that last YouTube step, but maybe that was just an isolation error. A lot of people in the comments are cheering me on saying it was YouTube was on a break, so I'm
When
just
in
gonna
doubt, blame the third party tool. I agree.
exactly.
It's YouTube's fault.
But
I
I
know
do
we're
actually
coming up
have
to
this library. If anyone wants any of these agents, a lot of them are available to clone as well.
amazing, super cool. Should we get into some questions?
Yes, let's do it.
Yeah. So first of all, a couple around pricing. So someone was checking out the relevance pricing page and saw that workforce was only mentioned under enterprise. Is that the case, or is this available across all the different tiers?
Workforce as a feature is available to any paid user, and so that means even pro onwards.
Amazing.
Yeah. I
Perfect.
think what the enterprise would have been referring to is like built for you custom workforces that are
Gotcha.
like super advanced, and our team actually sort of comes up with them.
Nice. That's I think that touches on another question that someone had about to like the level of onboarding for the different plans. So when you get towards enterprise, you could even have some done for you services in there.
Yeah, that's correct.
Perfect. And then an interesting one from Evika asking, with regards to the quota, is there some sort of incentive evaluation scheme for each agent? So could you plan in something or not yet that you'd say, oh, if you think it's going to cost this many tokens, then don't do it. Is that something that's a possibility?
At the moment, I don't see a way that we can do that right now, but it's something that we were asked about a lot, and I think it's on the roadmap. I mean, like super soon. Yeah, because I think the best way is to just run an agent a certain amount of times, fix the input, fix like an idea of what the output should look like without Atlas, right? Like Atlas is not going to deviate from like let's say 100 credits, right? It's I mean, give or take 5%, but for the most part, if we just give the LLM limits, it won't. But I can't really say that at the moment we can tell agents to like not to not do an action if it costs X amount of credits because it needs to do the action to know how many credits
Absolutely.
it costs. That's
Yeah.
that's a bit of a thing that is yeah, difficult.
Yeah, no, 100% makes sense. This was actually one of the first questions we had, a great one from Johnny. I like the direction it's going. Is there a way for my agents from my Relevance account to speak directly to my friend's agent in their Relevance account? E.g., I can tell my PA agent to speak to the friend's PA agent to do something. So can we have the agents talking to each other across different Relevance accounts?
So basically, y'all don't want to talk to each other anymore.
Exactly. Like the friendship should only be on weekends, I guess, and everything else the agent takes care of.
Well, I mean, we've seen AI sort of talking to each other, right? And they use that weird language between each other. But we don't have that like natively built in per se, like connect to this other person's relevance agent, but it can be done. Yes, yeah, it can be done via webhooks.
Or for
Yeah.
instance, today you create a certain email address for both the agents and let the agents send emails to those email addresses and use that as a trigger input,
Yeah,
right? And then at least you have a bit of documentation about what the agents are scheming behind your back.
it's a workarounds thing, but the workarounds are pretty easy to set up.
Yeah,
Yeah. I'd
perfect.
say emails or webhooks or some form of just very quick messaging between each other.
Awesome. And then this one, we can tell it's a little bit of a European audience. I'm not sure how much you get this in Australia as well, Ahmed, but can you comment on company data privacy with regards to relevance?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And a lot of Europe also asks about like GDPR and stuff as well. So I know that's like a lot more a bigger of a thing there. So The I guess the cliff notes is that the platform is so I'll bring up the page here in case someone wants to read it while I speak to it. But we're SOC 2 Type 2 compliant and multi-region by nature. So the platform is compliant. And we've got different regions. So your data, let's say if you're in the US region, is locked into the US, it doesn't shift around. And you'll know if you've created an account. If you're in the US, it'll be in the US. If you, for some reason, need to change this for any reason, you can reach out to support. EU as well, in London, Australia, and Sydney. And then another question is, what about the language models, right? We use all these language models. Is our data being used to train OpenAI or Anthropic? The answer is no, because we uh, self-host the models. So if you look down here, they're hosted on our own deployments. So like GPT, Azure, Claude, Anthropic, not used for training, data is not logged. So all that is usually a big question we get asked. We also have like a trust center if you want to inquire about that too. Like outside of this, around like GDPR compliance and things like that as well. We are ticked off there.
Makes sense. And then when it comes to the different integrations, obviously, for instance, if you connect an agent to HubSpot, then you need to go and check what the HubSpot policy is on these same sort of things, right? So you do need to do a little bit of delegation yourself on what are the tools my agents are connecting to and what are their privacy policies and how they handle the data.
Yeah, yeah. Essentially, just watch out for what you're connecting with. Like if you're using, say people asking like, oh, if I use Vappy, like the voice assistant thing, like is my data that's traveling to Vappy gonna be, does that somehow get leaked or something?
Yeah.
The question is, the answer is like look at what Vappy has just to make sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And similar to this, Elena had some questions like in the privacy set, well, like what about guardrails and prompt injection, especially when you have like a live connection to a database to make sure that agents aren't dropping tables and that sort of thing.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
So are there anything about giving guardrails to your agents?
Yeah.
And also she mentioned a question about prompt injection. So I guess when it comes to guardrails, it would more be in the, like, let's say the abilities that you'll give your agent. Typically, like, let's say when you're connecting to HubSpot, you tell the agent which actions it can do in HubSpot, right? So if you don't
Yeah.
want your agent to delete contacts, you just wouldn't give your agent the ability to do so. And that would be the main way I would see, like, making sure that it doesn't do what you don't want it to do.
Yeah. Well, let's say with HubSpot, I mean, like that's a really tough one because like there's these MCPs coming out, right? And we also have like our own API call tool steps.
Yeah,
And the way that our agents can use them is almost in an MCP fashion because it can actually dynamically, like based on what you want, fill in the inputs, like the relative path, the
yeah,
the method and the body to do whatever it wants. So uh you can leave it super general, but that's risky. So I would say don't like the default shouldn't be you can do everything but don't do this. The
yeah,
default should probably be like X amount of actions that I would usually do. Like it would probably only be like a handful anyway, and just like custom code those and don't let the agent configure the inputs itself. Make it all manual.
yeah. And that's another perfect actually use case for multi-agent systems. So like I think what you showed before was more on like the data format you were creating agents, for instance, like writing emails. You could also have a HubSpot agent that whenever you want to interact with HubSpot, you delegate a task to the HubSpot agent, and that one is configured in terms of what data can it pull in, what information can it write, and then when you want to change this, you're only updating your Harry the HubSpot agent, and you don't need to configure this in many different agents.
Yeah, yeah, couldn't agree more. I made a HubSpot agent called Hercules, and
Nice.
this is becoming a pattern with these naming conventions. But yeah, it basically does that same thing. It's like data hygiene, CRM type agent.
Perfect. Amazing. Now, I know we've come up on time. So I think, sorry if we didn't get to your question. We tried to cover as many as possible. Ahmed, is there anything you want to leave us with? What is the best way for someone to get started? I know a lot of people have also asked for that, the link to the Notion document. I'm sure we can include that in the email tomorrow. But yeah, what's the best way for someone to just get started and try playing around with some of these?
Honestly, it's free to set up an account. You don't have to pay for any of the agents that you clone or anything. You're only charged for usage. So once you find something useful, give it a go, give it a test. But yeah, really, I would just encourage you to go on the template, see what's available, hit up that Notion page that we'll send up. we'll send out after this. And you clone the agents, just have a look around, experiment, see how things are prompted, and yeah, just go from there. And if you have any questions, feel free to, of course, shoot me an email or we've also got a great support team and a lot of really good resources and docs too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it was like commented on before, like the work that the team at Relevance are doing, not just on actually building this amazing product, but also around education in the space of agents. So definitely follow Ahmed and some of his team on LinkedIn. They're sharing amazing use cases, also like Relevance YouTube channel. It's definitely a great source of inspiration and also education, 100%.
And also, if there's anything that you want to see, like I create and share AI agents on LinkedIn and I create tutorials on YouTube. So if you'll have any good ideas of things that you want to see, I'm always really open to hearing that because we just want to make more and more of this stuff that's useful.
Amazing. Awesome. Then thanks so much, everyone, for sticking with us through the 90 minutes. It felt like it went way quicker than that. And Ahmed, especially, thanks so much for joining this in the evening, your time. We really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks so much for having me. And thanks, everyone. You've been an amazing audience and hope to hear from a lot of you soon or see you unfold this journey.
Amazing. Awesome. Bye, everyone.